I helped my brother leave his bride at the altar because she invited our mother. I'm a 28-year-old guy, and this happened about a month ago. My brother, who's 30, was supposed to marry a woman we thought was perfect for him. Turns out we were all wrong. It was a mess I wouldn't wish on anyone, but in hindsight, it showed me how far some people will go to control others. Our mom has always been a piece of work. Growing up, she was cold, manipulative, and mean, like truly mean. She had this way of making you feel small, like nothing you did was ever enough. My brother, being the older one, got the worst of it. She'd scream at him for the smallest things, guilt-trip him constantly, and basically treated him like her emotional punching bag. He spent years in therapy just to untangle the damage she did. 3 years ago, he finally went no contact after she tried to sabotage his job. She called his boss and made up some story about how he was untrustworthy, trying to get him fired. That was his breaking point. He warned her to stop meddling, but she doubled down, so he cut her off completely. I went low contact myself. I didn't have the same guts to go full no contact, but I've kept her at arm's length ever since. When my brother met his fiancée, she seemed great. She was sweet, supportive, and genuinely seemed to care about him. She even backed him up when he explained why our mom wasn't in his life anymore. Your mental health comes first, she'd say, and I honestly thought she was the best thing to happen to him. But as the wedding planning started, little things began to pop up. She'd make these comments about how a wedding is about family, or how it would be healing if everyone could come together. My brother shut her down every time, reminding her that he didn't want our mom at the wedding. She seemed to let it go, or at least that's what we thought. The night before the wedding, we had the rehearsal dinner. It was supposed to be a chill event with just close friends and family, but the second I walked in, I could tell something was off. My brother looked tense, like he was holding something in, and bride, well, she was being overly nice. Like, the kind of nice that makes you suspicious. Halfway through dinner, she stood up to give a toast. It started normal enough. She thanked everyone for being there, talked about how excited she was to marry my brother, and then she dropped the bomb. In the spirit of new beginnings, she said with this big, fake smile, I want to welcome someone very special tonight. Mom. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. My brother went completely still. The room got dead silent, and then our mom walked in, acting like she belonged there. She was smiling, looking smug, and you could just tell she thought she'd won. I stood up immediately and said, "What the hell is this?" My brother didn't say a word. He was just staring at Bride, completely frozen. Bride, trying to act innocent, said, I thought this would be a nice surprise. Weddings are about family, and I thought it was time to heal old wounds. She looked at my brother like she expected him to thank her or something. Instead, he pushed his chair back and walked out without saying a word. I followed him out, leaving Bride standing there looking confused. When we got outside, my brother was pacing back and forth, his hands shaking. She knew. She knew I didn't want this, he kept saying over and over. I tried to calm him down, but honestly, I was just as pissed as he was. I mean, who does that? He trusted her, and she completely went behind his back. We ended up leaving the rehearsal dinner and going to his apartment. Bride tried calling him all night, but he ignored every call. The next morning, my brother told me that he overheard Bride talking to her maid of honor about how she'd invited our mom to the actual wedding too. She had reserved a seat for her near the front, without telling him. That was it for him. He told me he didn't know what to do. He loved Bride, but how could he marry someone who would do something like this? I told him, plain and simple, you can't marry her. If she can't respect your boundaries now, she never will. On the day of the wedding, my brother went through the motions. He got dressed, showed up at the venue, and even posed for pictures. I could tell he was struggling, but I think part of him was still trying to process everything. I wasn't sure what his plan was, or if he even had one, but I stayed by his side the whole time. When the ceremony started, everything seemed normal. The music played, Bride walked down the aisle, and she was smiling like she hadn't just betrayed him the night before. She reached the altar, and I saw my brother take a deep breath. He turned to the officiant and said, loud and clear, I can't do this. The whole room went silent. Bride looked at him, her smile faltering. What are you talking about? She whispered, her voice shaky. He didn't hesitate. I told you I didn't want my mom here. I made that clear from the beginning. You went behind my back, lied to me, and did it anyway. If you can't respect this boundary now, how can I trust you with anything else? Bride's face turned red, and she started crying. You're humiliating me, she said, her voice cracking. You can't do this to me. Before he could respond, our mom stood up from her seat and yelled, "How dare you embarrass her like this? You're acting like a child." That was it for him. He turned to her and said, "You're the reason I'm here right now saying this. I didn't want you here. I told you to stay out of my life, and now you've ruined the one relationship I thought I could trust." Then he turned back to Bride and said, "I'm done." And with that, he walked out. I didn't think twice, I followed him. We left together, ignoring the chaos behind us. I could hear Bride crying and people whispering, but I didn't care. My brother needed someone to have his back, and I wasn't about to let him deal with this alone. We went back to his apartment and spent the rest of the day talking about everything. He was hurt, obviously, but he was also relieved. "I don't know why I didn't see it before," he said. "She's just like Mom, always needing to be in control, always thinking she knows what's best for everyone else." I told him he did the right thing. Marrying someone who disregards your boundaries is a disaster waiting to happen, and it's better to walk away now than spend years trying to fix something that can't be fixed. For a week, things were quiet. Bride didn't call, our mom didn't show up, and it seemed like they'd finally gotten the message. But of course, that didn't last. Bride came back swinging. My brother got a letter from her lawyer, demanding that he reimburse her for all the wedding expenses. Everything from the venue to the catering to her dress. She claimed he'd caused her emotional distress, and that he owed her for wasting her time. As if that wasn't enough, she started posting about him online. She wrote these long posts about how he abandoned her at the altar and gaslit her for years. She even tagged mutual friends and tried to turn them against him. She wanted to make him look like the bad guy, and she wasn't holding back. My brother was crushed. He showed me the letter and the posts, and I could see how much it was weighing on him. "What am I supposed to do?" he asked. "She's trying to ruin my life." I told him, "We fight back." I started by gathering evidence. Over the years, Bride had sent countless texts and emails to my brother, and I went through all of them. I found messages where she admitted to secretly inviting our mom to the wedding and talked about how it would be a beautiful moment. I also took screenshots of her social media posts, especially the ones where she was lying about what happened. Then I reached out to her lawyer and sent them everything I had. I made it clear that if Bride didn't drop her demands, we'd countersue for defamation. I also shared the evidence with some of the mutual friends she'd been trying to manipulate. Once they saw the truth, they started calling her out publicly. Within days, Bride deleted her social media accounts and backed off completely. Her lawyer sent a letter saying they were dropping all claims, and that was the end of it. Or so we thought. Just when we thought it was over, my mom decided to get involved again. She wasn't content with the chaos she'd already caused. She needed to take things further. Somehow, she found out where my brother worked, and she started calling his employer. She pretended to be a concerned client and made up stories about how my brother was unstable and unfit for his position. She even filed fake complaints about his performance, hoping to get him in trouble. At first, my brother didn't realize what was happening. He noticed his boss acting distant and some co-workers avoiding him, but he thought it was just because of the stress from the canceled wedding. Then HR called him in for a meeting and told him they'd received multiple complaints about him. That's when he pieced it together. He called me right after the meeting, and I could hear the frustration in his voice. "She's trying to ruin my career again," he said. "I can't believe she's doing this." I told him, "We're not letting her get away with it. This ends now." We started by contacting his HR department again. This time, we didn't just explain the situation, we came prepared with proof. I had old emails and messages from my mom, showing how she'd tried to sabotage his career in the past. I also suggested he file a police report for harassment to create an official record of her behavior. The HR team was surprisingly understanding. They promised to flag any future complaints from her and assured my brother that his position wasn't in jeopardy. But I wasn't satisfied with just stopping her. She needed to know we weren't playing around anymore. I went to her house unannounced. When she opened the door, she had this smug look on her face, like she thought she'd gotten away with everything. I didn't waste time. I held up a folder of evidence and said, "If you don't stop, we're filing for a restraining order. You've already done enough damage." She tried to play the victim, of course. "I just want my family back," she said, her voice trembling like she was about to cry. I wasn't buying it. "You don't get to destroy his life and call it love," I told her. "Stay out of his business, or I'll make sure you regret it." She didn't say anything after that. She just closed the door and I left. For once, it seemed like she got the message. But then Bride reappeared. Somehow, she and my mom had teamed up. They came up with one last desperate scheme. Bride had gotten hold of some old family photos and letters my brother had written to our mom years ago, back when he was still trying to mend their relationship. These letters were deeply personal. He'd poured his heart out in them, talking about his struggles with anxiety, guilt, and his hope that they could fix things. Bride and my mom sent him a message, saying that unless he agreed to meet them for a family reconciliation dinner, they'd leak the photos and letters online. Bride framed it as a chance for closure, while my mom claimed it was the only way to heal the family. But we both knew the truth. It was blackmail, plain and simple. My brother showed me the message, and I could see how much it hurt him. "They're trying to use my past against me," he said. "I don't know what to do." I told him, "We're not letting them control you." The first thing we did was take control of the situation. Together, we wrote a social media post where my brother shared his journey. He talked about his struggles with anxiety and his attempts to reconcile with our mom in the past. He even included excerpts from the letters, framing them as part of his healing process. He didn't name Bride or our mom directly, but he made it clear that certain people were trying to use his past to hurt him. The response was incredible. Friends, co-workers, and even acquaintances flooded his inbox with messages of support. By sharing his story on his own terms, he stripped Bride and our mom of their power. They couldn't use the letters against him because he'd already laid everything bare. But I wasn't done yet. I started digging into Bride's past, and it didn't take long to find a pattern. She'd pulled similar stunts with her exes, smear campaigns, manipulation, and even false accusations. I gathered everything I could find and confronted her directly. "You think you're the victim here?" I said when I called her. "I have proof of everything you've done, not just to my brother, but to other people too. If you don't back off, I'll make sure everyone knows who you really are." She tried to deny it at first, but I could hear the panic in her voice. Within days, she deleted her social media accounts and stopped contacting my brother. She knew she'd been cornered. With Bride out of the picture, we turned our attention to making sure my mom couldn't interfere in my brother's life again. We filed for restraining orders against both of them. Between the evidence of harassment, the blackmail attempts, and my mom's workplace sabotage, the case was a slam dunk. When the restraining orders were granted, it felt like a huge weight had been lifted off my brother's shoulders. We made sure the restraining orders were served in a way that sent a clear message. Bride was served at a gathering she'd organized with a few remaining friends who hadn't yet caught on to her antics. Apparently, she tried to make a scene about it, but most people just left, embarrassed to be associated with her. My mom was served at a family dinner she wasn't even invited to. It was the last time anyone in the family spoke to her. With those two out of the picture, my brother started to heal. He focused on his work, rebuilt his social circle, and even started seeing someone new. This time, it's with someone who respects his boundaries and understands his past. I've never seen him so happy or confident, and it's clear that cutting out Bride and our mom was the best decision he could have made. As for Bride, she's disappeared from our lives completely. Last I heard, she moved out of state, likely to escape the reputation she built for herself. Her manipulations caught up with her, and no one in her old social circle wants anything to do with her anymore. My mom, on the other hand, is still trying to guilt-trip extended family members into talking to her, but most of them have finally seen her for who she is. She's isolated and bitter, left to stew in the wreckage of her own actions. Looking back, it's clear that standing up for ourselves was the only way to deal with people like Bride and our mom. They thrived on control and manipulation, but once we took that power away from them, they had nothing left. The whole experience was draining, but it taught me and my brother the importance of setting boundaries and sticking to them, no matter how hard it might feel in the moment. Revenge, for us, wasn't about being petty or vindictive. It was about reclaiming our peace and making sure the people who tried to hurt us couldn't do it again. Now, my brother is thriving, I'm stronger than ever, and the two of them? They've got nothing but themselves to blame.